Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuttapada Kamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavam Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Saritam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padhan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakanvitamscha Om Ajnanatirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurum Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadhati Swapadantikam Janma Dhyasa Yatum Vayati Taratasharate Shvabhigya Swarat Tene Brahmarhidhaya Radhikavaye Mulyanti Yasurayah Tejo Vani Mridam Yata Vinimayo Yatra Trisargo Mrisha Dhamna Svena Sadhana Rastu Kuhakam Satyam Param Dhimahi. Hariom Tat Sat. So we're still looking at this Atmarama verse a little bit. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is giving 6 other meanings of the word Atma or Atmarama, the primary meaning that he wants to give his primary exposition on is the meaning of the word Atma as Brahma or the absolute truth. But there are 6 other meanings that he gave according to one of the Sanskrit dictionaries. And he's just giving a little bit of elaboration on those other 6 meanings before he describes the meaning of Atmarama in terms of Vaidhi and Raganuga sadhakas, and also those who've attained Siddhi and Bhakti. He's already given an explanation in terms of Gyan Marg and Yoga Marg, so he has his Bhakti Marg exposition left. But before that, he's giving some explanation and of the word Atmarama in terms of these 6 other meanings. So we heard about 2 of them yesterday. The word Atma as mind and the word Atma as endeavor. So he has 4 other meanings he wants to give. And we're going to be looking at a couple of those today. Starting with the word Driti, the meaning of the word Atma as Driti. So where are we at here? Okay. Oops. I scrolled to the wrong spot. Okay, so we're starting from text 174. I'll show my screen here. Okie dokie. So here he says, another meaning of Atma is Driti or endurance. A person who endeavors with endurance is Atmarama. With endurance, such a person engages in devotional service. Atma Shabde Driti Kahe Dharya Rame. So another meaning of the word Atma is Driti, which Mahaprabhu is describing here as Dharya, one who derives the happiness, Dharya Rame, from Dharya, patience, or is described here as perseverance. The word Dharya, you know from Upadeshamrita, the 6 characteristics, not characteristics, 6 favorable qualities, that's not even the word I'm looking for, that are favorable to the nourishment of bhakti practice. Utsaha nishaya dharya tata karma pravartana, you know this verse. So Rupa Goswami mentions dharya is one of the qualities required for, you could say, sustaining and nourishing a healthy bhakti practice. So dharya means patience. So Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, elaborating on this, describes that one who has the quality of patience is called as dhira, right? Dhira, like Krishna said, dhira statranya muhiti in Bhagavad Gita. In this opening statement, he says, one can see how the soul is passing from, childhood to youth to old age. And similarly, at the time of death, it passes into another body. And Indira is one who is not bewildered by these changes in Prakriti because he's able to see the unchanging and undying soul underneath it all. So one who has a quality of has a quality of Dharya is called Dhira. And Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, when elaborating on this, says Dhira means someone who is able to control the urges. Vacho vegam, manasokroda vegam, jiva vegam, yovisha. Jiva vegam, what is that? Jiva vegam, I'm about to say yovisha hate to do that. That's the third line. Udura pasa vegam, eta vegam yovisha hate to do that. Saram apimam pritivam shashisha. This is the first verse of Upadeshamrita. Right? It's one who can control the urges of the speech, urges of the mind, urges of anger, and the urges of the tongue, belly, and genitals. Then such a person is called as dhira, or one who possesses the quality of dharya. And having been able to control those urges, he becomes qualified to rule the whole world. Right? One can rule the whole world who is able to rule himself, or say it in the converse. If persons are not wise enough to rule themselves, then they're not wise enough to rule the world. Thus, that gives a lot of explanation for the problems in today's society. In any case, one who can control the urges is called as dharya. Unless you're able to, one who is unable to keep his senses from running outward towards their objects and away from their actual purpose will not be able to achieve their actual purpose, right? Matirna Krishna Paratasvatova Mito Vipadyeta Grihavratana Adanta Gobir Vishatam Tamisham Puna Puna Shavrita Charanana. This is Prahlad speaking to his father. When Prahlad speaks to his father, father is asking a question: how did you become, Krishna conscious? That is a question. Essentially, he was asked in a little bit more of a disrespectful way, but this is after he sent his son for re-education, you can say, in the public school. Because public school is meant for indoctrination and brainwashing, essentially. So when he first asked his son, what is it that you learned in school? And he told his father that he should go to the forest, give up materialistic household life, which is the blind well, and which destroys or degrades the soul. They said you should go to the forest and do Hari Bhajan. So he was like, okay, my kid has gotten some influence of Vaishnavas, maybe Narada Muni, whom Hiranyakashipu somehow they didn't have any real animosity toward. So they were be sure my kid doesn't get the influence of the Vaishnavas and just re-educate him. So he sent them back to public school. And they tried to re-educate him. So they thought they had done a good job. They bring him back to the father. Father again asked, how is it that what is the best thing that you learned? And that time, Prahlad Maharaj says, Shravan Kirtan Vishnu Smarnam. This famous verse was there. And Hiranyakashipu freaked out. He was about to basically kill Shanda and Namarka, his teachers. And they said, listen, that's not us, that's all him. We don't know why he's giving an answer like this. So then Hiranyakashipu asked this question: how is it that you became Krishna conscious? Very good question. And in reply to that, the first statement Prahlad says is this one: Matirna Krishna Paratasvatova Mito Abhipadyeta Grihavratana. That from one who is Griha Vrata. So Griha Vrata means their vow. Vrata is to enjoy the house, Griha. So the house is representative of our God project, basically. When I say God project, means that we want to be the center right? God is actually the center and everything orbits around him, right? But we want to displace God from the center, place ourselves in the center, and have everything orbit around us. So the Griha is like a symbol of that attempt, materialistic Griha Medi life, devoid of Krishna consciousness, is basically more or less a symbol of the attempt to put oneself in the center and have everything orbit around them. So we call it our God project. So if you are Grihavartanam, not only because you're practically a householder, but also metaphysically, right? You live in the world with the idea that you are the center and you want everything to revolve around you. That is out just as a sidebar. That is why we get frustrated or angry when we suffer, because we're supposed to be the center and things supposed to orbit around us nicely. So when we suffer, that is a immediate dissolution of the illusion that we are the center. Something is not moving according to our desire. We're not the center, right? So we're being proven as part of the something that orbits around another center. And so we get frustrated with that. So whether you're Grihavrata practically because you're a materialistic householder, or metaphysically because you're just enjoying jiva in this world, then Prahlad says you will not be able to develop the material Krishna, the Krishna consciousness, basically, the Krishna mati, by your own endeavor or by some assistance or a combination of both. That's not going to happen. Adantago beer. So you become adantago. So adantago means untamed senses, right? Because one is grihavrata, these senses are untamed, like wild horses. They're running outward towards their objects capriciously, pulling one away from the direction east toward Godhead. And in this way, Vishatam to Mishram, one gradually degrades to hell or remains in samsara. Puna puna charvata charvananam, chewing that which has already been chewed. Famous verse. So if you don't get your senses under control, then you cannot become Krishna conscious, basically. So one who has the quality of patience, dharya, right, that can restrain their senses and make sure that their senses are moving towards the direction of their true aim in life. Such a person is also called as Atmarama. Dharya Vanta Evahang Karaye Bhajane. Without this Dharya Vanta, without being full, well, it's saying it in the opposite. One who is filled with the Dharya, then he can do Krishna bhajan. Otherwise, not possible. Another meaning of Dharya is that whenever you do some sadhana because you have some sadhya in mind, right? So if those on the path of karma, their sadhya is swarga loka. Those on the path of gyan, their sadhya is liberation, moksha. And those on the path of bhakti, their sadhya is bhav, right? Or you can just say generically pleasing Krishna, or bhav bhakti. So everyone does some sadhana with some sadhya in mind. But due to prolonged sadhana, when the sadhya is not coming, there's a tendency to become impatient and fall away from the practice. Right? As I'm always saying, this was mentioned yesterday also, I received this from Dhanandar Swami in a different context of being stuck in immigration in Kali. But Colombia, Bogota, I think we flew into Bogota. And he said, waiting is the greatest surrender. So what happens when you have to wait a long time, you lose patience and you hang up. Just like sometimes you call like a 1-800 number, some government number, and they put you on hold. And it's 5 minutes past, 10 minutes past, 15 minutes, and then you lose patience, you hang up and call again. So when doing prolonged sadhana, there's a tendency to become impatient. When that impatience comes, the senses become extremely agitated, and the natural result of the agitation is they run outward towards the sense objects, thus deviating us or moving us in the direction west, away from our goal. So without this dharya quality, you cannot do Krishna bhajan, or you cannot really, not only Krishna bhajan, but you'll not attain any sadhya in any field, actually. So one who has this quality, they are also called as Atmarama. And this quality is also required for doing Hari Bhajan. So he gives, well, he makes a statement here about this. The word Muni also means bird and bumblebee, because Atmarama is Chamunayo, right? So he says the word Muni also means bird and bumblebee. The word Nirgranta refers to foolish people, because Nirgranta, Murkajana. Nirgrante, again, the word Nirgranta means without the book, the Granta, which is having all the, vidis and nishedas, the prescriptions and prohibitions, the injunctions of shastras. So those who are in their granta, that means they don't follow those injunctions. They're called murkajana, they're foolish people. They do as their senses command them. They're called negrante also. So this word muni can refer to birds and bees. This word negranta refers to murkajana. By the mercy of Krishna, such persons get sadhu's kripa, and they also become steady or patient in bhakti yoga, devotional service, donhara bhajana. So I was wondering why this statement was brought up in the context of talking about driti. I only have an intuitive insight because the next set of verses that Mahaprabhu quotes are from the gopis appreciating different species of life, like the birds and the bumblebees who became fixed on Krishna. So this is one such verse here as an example. Yo batam bamunayo vihagavanesmin Krishnekshtitam taduditam kalavenu gitam Aruhya ye drumabhujam ruchira prabhalan Sremvanti mili tadrisho Vigatanya vacha. My dear mother, in this forest, all the birds, after rising on the beautiful branches of the trees, are closing their eyes and not being attracted by any other sound, are simply listening to the vibration of Krishna's flute. Such birds must be on the same level as great saints. So that's why Mahaprabhu was saying that the word muni also means birds and bees, but these are not ordinary birds and bees, it seems. These are those who are munis who somehow achieve the bodies of birds and bees. You'll see the next verse also similar statement. The gopis appreciating Krishna Balaram going into the forest. O good fortune personified, O original personality of Godhead, all these bees are chanting about your transcendental fame, which will purify the entire universe. Indeed, they are following your path in the forest and are worshiping you. Actually, they are all saintly persons, but now they have taken the form of bees. Although you are playing like a human being, they cannot forget that you are their worshipable deity. Okay, one other verse, similar, actually, two other verses. All the cranes and swans in the water are being enchanted by the melodious song of Krishna's flute. They have approached and are worshiping the Supreme Personality of Godhead with full attention. Alas, they are closing their eyes and are becoming completely silent. So the only intuitive insight that I got from this, because this is an explanation in the context of driti, right? Having the endurance despite, and keeping the senses fixed on one's goal despite obstacles and setbacks, right? Or despite delay in achieving the sadhya. So Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, and describing the second idea of sadhya as not becoming impatient due to delay in obtaining sadhya, he says the mentality of such a sadhu is that Krishna is bound to give his mercy either today, tomorrow, after 100 years, or in some other lifetime. And in all cases, I shall never give up my endeavor for attaining Krishna. And then Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur concludes his essay on Dharya by saying that this is what is known as Dharya or patience. So here, these munis have achieved bodies of birds and bees, and yet their endeavor to meditate on Krishna is persevering, it's enduring. So they're given as examples of the quality of Daryat. I was also maybe reminded of Bharat Maharaj. So due to his apparent attachment to a deer, he takes birth as a deer. That can be very demoralizing, especially in ISKCON. So much propaganda we say by taking prasadam, you'll at least get human body. We say like that. By chanting holy name, even one time, you'll get human birth at least to perfect your bhajan. And then you go and say, okay, I'm happy to hear that. Then you go and read fifth canto, Bharat Maharaj story. He takes body of deer, even though he had bhav bhakti. So then you become disturbed. What is this? Y'all said like this, but here in the Shastra, some other thing is going on. Yes. So then you get the real import of that pastime. Krishna is making a situation in order to augment the nature of the heart of a devotee, augment his bhava, his love. So although it's a little discouraging to take birth in the body of a deer, he still had his awareness and he persevered. He made sure not to associate with any bad deer association. He would go to the hermitages of sadhus and maybe participate in kirtan and all of that. And he persevered. And then next life, he took birth as Dada Bharata, great saintly devotee. So that was only intuitive insight why Mahaprabhu was giving the example of the birds and the bees who were munis previously as an example of driti or dharya or endurance or perseverance. Okay, he also talked about Nagranta. Nagranta means the foolish people who don't follow rules and regulations. So they can also become driti, develop driti by mercy of sadhu. So Mahaprabhu gives this famous verse also from the second canto. This verse is coming in the fourth chapter of the second canto where Shukadeva Goswami is performing Mangalacharan before he starts to really, get into the Bhagavatam. Famous verse, Kirata Hunandra Pulenda Pukasha Abhira Shumbha Yavana Kasadhaya. So these are different, you can say, races of humans. Prabhupada even identifies them, and here is just using the Sanskrit term, but in the Bhagavatam verses, he even identifies them in terms of recognizable races today. So Srimad Bhagavatam is not anti-racist in the way that people would hope to find in the spiritual literature, because anti-racism, in a sense, is not truly possible on the material platform. The anti-racism becomes possible if you're actually seeing the spirit soul. But without seeing the spirit soul, as long as you're absorbed in your ego persona, then racism is just a concomitant or congenital with identity with one's false ego. So I know these sort of statements can be uncomfortable for devotees who are attached to some of the mainstream political stuff. But in truth, Bhagavatam is not anti-racist. So you'll find these sort of statements in Shastra periodically. But they want to make another point. So these different races, Ya Anyecha Papa, Yarupashraya Shraya, and others, Jay Anye, and others who are having sinful birth, or you can say, and others who are sinful. These persons can be purified by taking shelter of the devotees of the Lord due to his being the supreme power. I offer my respectful obeisances unto him. So, Shudyanti Tasmai Prabhu Vishnave Namaha, my obeisances unto, Lord Vishnu, the most powerful, that these different races, along with others who are sinful, they can be purified by taking shelter of those who have taken shelter of the Supreme Lord. So that means the devotees, obviously. So this is echoing Maharu's statement that by sadhu kripa, even the murkha jana, they become driti. That means they also become perseverant in the endeavor to attain sadhya bhakti. And we have so many examples of that in ourselves. We're certainly part of this list here. At least in the word sin, all of us are included undoubtedly. And we might be included in some of the other part of the list also. So, but by sadhu kripa, by the mercy of sadhus, we've come to this Krishna conscious movement. By the mercy of sadhus, we're being maintained also. Otherwise, we would go away because of our low nature. And by the mercy of sadhus, we'll be brought to the goal sooner or later. So by their mercy, we also become driti. That's basically what I did here. We become atmarama in the sense of having the perseverance to attain the sadhya. So yay to the sadhus. Okay, he gives another meaning of driti here. Kemvam driti shabde nija purna tadi genahai. So the word driti is also used when one is fully perfect in knowledge. Nija purna tadi gyan. When due to having obtained the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one has no material miseries. He attains Mahapurna, the highest level of perfection. So basically, three things here. Purna Tadigan means like complete knowledge, or Gana, knowledge, or you can say consciousness and completion. In our present state of conditioned life, there's a constriction on our awareness. So most conditioned souls, their awareness is constricted, and you can say restricted to the notion of the self as the material body and the material world as the ultimate reality. And they go on playing out the illusion with that constriction. But if they do some sadhana, they can break through that constriction and enter into more complete understandings of reality. But reality in its completion is knowledge of Krishna. So Nija Purnatadigan basically refers to realization of the Lord. And when such realization is had, their dukkha abhave means the absence of dukkha, and uttama praptye, and one obtains the best thing, which is prema. So Mahaprabhu quotes this verse in BRS, which is describing driti also. But driti is being described here as one of the vyabhichari bhavs, sanchari bhavs. You know what is vyabhichari bhavs? They're the, if you have the sthayi bhav, right? Then the vyabhichari bhavs are like the different emotional waves that come out of the ocean of the sthayi bhav. They kind of flavor your bhav and then disappear back into the ocean. And they're constantly coming up, these different ways of emotional experiences. So they're called vyabhichari or sanchari bhavs, and driti is one of them. So another definition of driti has been given. So we heard about driti in terms of a more like sadhana orientation. Now I'm hearing about driti in terms of a sort of perfection. It's like a perfectional quality. Andritisya purantak gyan dukkha bhavo tamaptibihi apraptatita nashtarta nabi sangsho chanadikrit. So driti is the fullness felt due to the absence of misery and the attainment of knowledge of the Supreme Lord and pure love for him. The lamentation that accrues from not obtaining a goal or from losing something already attained does not affect this completeness. So Purnata Gyan, complete Gyan, that means realization of the Lord, as already mentioned. If there's realization of the Lord, then dukkha abhava, absence of dukkha, uttama aptibhi. So this uttama aptibhi here means prema, attainment of prema. So one is feeling fullness, purnata, from the Gyan, from the absence of misery, and from the prema. So from that, such a person is called dhritisya. Such a person is said to have this quality of dhriti. So when there's loss of things obtained, or or loss from things obtained, loss of things obtained, or the non-achievement of some specific goal, the completeness, the driti is not affected. The fullness is not affected. So this is like a perfectional state. You know, an example of the driti would be like Prahlad Maharaj. So despite being persecuted in so many heinous ways, he was unable to give up his worship of the Supreme Lord because of his driti. So same with like Haridas Thakur, any of these examples can be given because of the driti, the fullness that they get from the experience of the Supreme Lord. Srila Jiva Goswami talks about this in the beginning of the Bhakti Sundarbha. I haven't made this point in a long time because I'm only just now remembering it. But Sri Jiva Goswami gives the example of Prahlad Maharaj to describe, I forget precisely what point he's describing. I think he's describing a Haituki, a Pratiyata, honestly, but I don't remember precisely. But he goes on to make the point that the experience of bhakti and perfection is such that there is no greater happiness than that experience. And there is no greater suffering than separation from that experience. I forget, oh my God, it's like on the tip of my tongue, my thought tongue. What shloka is he elaborating on when he makes this point? I do think it is Ahaitukiya Pratiyata, but yeah, I think he's elaborating the Pratiyata point, how the bhakti of, perfection, bhakti siddhi is, how you say, how bhakti siddhi is apratiyata, not interrupted. So the reason is not, so yeah, yes, it is that point. So Jiva Goswami says interruption takes place when there's something greater than what you're doing, or there's some threat of some suffering that is scary enough for you to give up the thing that you're doing. I'm not saying that in perfect articulation, but I think you get the gist. If you're enjoying something, but there is something greater than the thing that you're enjoying, then you'll give up the thing. And if there's some greater suffering, if there's some suffering that's coming your way and the suffering is intense enough for you to give up the thing that you're enjoying, then in those two ways, your engagement with the thing that you say gives you happiness will be interrupted. But bhakti is apratiyata, bhakti siddhi is apratiyata because there's no greater happiness in it to make you disconnect with the bhakti. And there's no greater suffering than separation from it. So even the suffering of being persecuted and tortured is not greater than the suffering of being separated from worship of the Lord. So in this way, bhakti remains apratiyata. Very nice point from Srila Jiva Goswami, very interesting. And here you get, because within that bhakti siddhi, there's this driti. This driti is an emotional perfection. Vyavichari bhav, in other words. And so it's described here. You're realizing the Lord, there's absence of misery or suffering, and there's the experience of prema. So your bhakti becomes apratiyata, or fixed driti. Okay, I think he offers a couple of pramanams here. A devotee of Krishna is never in a miserable condition. This is Mahaprabhu's own explanation of this driti verse. Nor does he have any desire other than to serve Krishna. He is experienced in advance. He feels the transcendental bliss of love of Krishna and always engages in his service and perfection. Krishna Prema Seva Purnananda Pravin. Yep. And another example of this, Matsevaya Pratitam Te, another famous shloka. Salokyadi Chatushtayam, Nechanti Sevaya Purna Kutonya Kalaviplutam. I think this is coming in Ambarish 9.4. Yeah. This is Narayana speaking to Durvas Muni. Talking about the glory of his devotees. So here he's saying that even if offered the 4 types of liberation, they do not ichanti, the devotees do not desire them. If they are without seva to the Supreme Lord. They prefer my seva over anything. What did then kuto anya kala viplutam? What did then to speak of things that are destroyed by the time factor in this material world? No question of them desiring that. Even the mokshas they don't desire if it's without service to the Supreme Lord. So the idea is that they're driti, that there is no greater happiness than bhakti. So they moksha lagutakrit, they don't care for the moksha also. They remain driti. Otherwise, very hard. Sometimes when we're in sadhana stage, we suffer a little bit or a lot. And we think, a little moksha would be nice. Little moksha will go a long way. So that desire, or if the offer were to come on the table, that would be that could be a disturbance to us, right? If we don't have the driti. All right. I think one other sloka he gives here. In this material world, all living entities are disturbed due to their flickering position. Samsara jiva chanchale. And samsara, the jiva is chanchale, always moving here and there, going here and there, right? In the context of some of the ideas we brought up here, because we're getting pulled by our senses, like going here and there, here and there, here and there. But a devotee, however, is fixed in the service of the lotus feet of the Lord. Harishikesha, Harishikani, Yasya Starya Gatanti. So he is Starya Gatanti. He is fixed in the Krishna Seva, who is the master of the senses. Such a person is to be considered situated in endurance and patience. So sa eva dharyam apnoti. Such a person is obtained dharyam, patience, or dhira, or endurance, perseverance, dhriti, all these things. So we are being, I guess, inspired to become Atmarama in this way. His last statements about this, the word cha is for emphasis, and the word api, this is in the original Atmarama Shamuneo verse, is used to indicate an aggregate. Thus, it is to be understood that even dull creatures, birds and illiterates, can also be situated in endurance and engage in Krishna's devotional service. Of course, they got to get Mahaprabhu's mercy in the form of Sadhu Sangha. All right, I wanted to cover one other meaning, but there were a lot of shlokas there. And for the next one, there are tons of shlokas also. So we're going to pause and see if anyone wants to say anything here. Yes, Athena, try to ask a question that's like 1 or 2 or 3 sentences, because your statements get to be a little too long and people get lost and confused. And so try to be eloquent. Like Kaviraj Goswami says, truth spoken concisely is true eloquence. So try to be as eloquent as possible with your question so everyone can follow and not get lost, including me.
Haribo, yes, sorry, my fault. I tend to ramble, and I'll do my best to be concise. So my first question is for Dira. You said the senses must be in control to be Krishna conscious. So how does that fit in line that bhakti is separate from the 4 regulative principles? And is this the case in one sense only for Dira Atmaramas to do Hari Bhajan?
So to attain bhakti as a sadhya, you have to have your senses have to be on board, right? In order to do sadhana, you need your body, isn't it? Without a body, there cannot be any sadhana, either of karma, gyan, or bhakti. That is with the devatas of the elements, like Mahatattva, ego, and so on, in the 3rd canto, chapter 5, they offer prayers to Krishna that we've been manifested, but we need you to imbue us with your Shakti to bring us together so we can generate the bodies. And then the souls can do the sadhanas to pursue you as Brahman, Paramatma, Bhagavan, or whatever. So you need your body to perform the sadhana, right? So if your senses are part of the apparatus, so they have to be on board. Otherwise, they will move you in a direction opposite of your purpose. So you don't have to have sense control to start bhakti. But if you want to achieve the sadhya of bhakti, then your senses have to be cooperate, right? Otherwise, they move you away from the goal. Now, we would say that bhakti itself will give the um, purity, will purify the senses, right? What is that verse that we always say? Sarvo upadi vinirmuktam tap paratuna nirmalam harishikana sevanam bhakti uchate. I think this verse. Uchate, I think. So by bhakti, the senses become purified. And then purified senses means what? That they'll cooperate and help you move towards your goal, the sadhya. So in that sense, Prahlad Maharaj is saying that if you are griha vrata, then your senses are untamed, then you'll not be able to get the Krishnamati. That won't be possible. So yeah, you have to become Dhira or controller of the urges to achieve anything in life. Actually, if you want to be an Olympian, you have to control your senses and train hard when the senses are like disturbed by that training. So same when it comes to sadhya. So therefore, Rupa Goswami opens his Upadeshamrita with this verse, Vacho Vegam Manasokroda Vegam, right? It doesn't actually even talk about Bhakti Sadhana proper until verse 7 and 8 of Upadeshamrita. All the previous verses are sort of gateways. This is Sri Jiva Goswami is writing in Bhakti Sandarbha, how the gateway to sadhana bhakti is Sharanagati and Sadhu Sangha. So you can see that the verses of Upadeshamrita kind of reflect that. The first three verses kind of deal with Sharanagati, what is favorable and unfavorable for bhakti sadhana. And then next three verses deals with Sadhu Sangha, verses 4, 5, 6. And then finally, verse 7 is bhakti sadhana proper, chanting, with the taste, and then chanting with the goal of Braja in mind. That's verse 7 and 8. So yeah, the senses have to be on board. Otherwise, you can't move towards any goal, actually.
Thank you. That does remind me, there was a discussion around how I think in Bhagavad Gita, it was that one must, human form is also made for austerity. This is my next question is somewhat in line with this. And I want to make sure, did you say that Mahaprabhu said that one has to follow rules and regulations? If not, they're considered fools?
Yeah, so the word was Negrante Murkajana. So because the word Negranta is coming in the Atmarama Shloka, right? Atmarama Chamunayo, Negranta. So the word Granta means book, like Shastra that is having the injunctions in it, right? Do this, don't do this, the injunctions, the prohibitions. So Nirgranta can refer to someone who's without book. That means they don't follow the Shastric injunctions. They're called Murkajana, foolish people. Like Americans, for example, we don't follow Bible or anything. We just say that we're a Christian, Muslim, Hindu, Jew, whatever, but we do what we want. So they're called a Murkajana. They don't follow any book. The Shastra Vidis, that's what it means there.
Thank you. And this, of course, is applying to all of us non-realized souls, because in one sense, if you're fully realized, like nothing would affect you. Like if Srila Prabhupada ate meat, it wouldn't affect his consciousness. And you had mentioned that kind of these Atmaramas, they don't really fit into institutions. And in one sense, although regs are given through Shastra, many times, these kind of principles are set by the institution. Can you comment on that?
The word Nirgranta can refer to a self-realized soul also. He is also Nirgranta, without the knots, right? Without the books, like Shukadev Goswami. Because the word Granta also means like knot. The instructions are not, you do this, do that, do this. Of course, the ignorance is the real knot that is Nirgranta can also mean without the false ego. Without the knot. So in Vedic culture, there are a lot of knots there. You put a knot in your dhoti. There's a knot in the Brahmin's thread. There's a knot in the Sika. If you see the guys wear the Sika, they put a knot in it. Then when you get married, you literally tie the knot, like quite literally in the ceremony, you tie the knot. So there are many knots there. So nirgranta can mean without the knots that bind one to social conventions. So that can also refer to a self-realized soul. They are also beyond the grantas, because the whole purpose of the granta is to get you the realization, to help you transcend it, so to speak. The transcendent means transcend the injunctions meant for governing like social interactions and so on. So they are also nirgranta. And then a person who doesn't follow Shastra in Vidyas, they are also nirgranta. I don't know if we would fall somewhere in between because we do follow granta. We follow Shastra conjunctions for regulating our lives, staying clean. Devotees try to follow when getting married, even, and so on. But we have a sense of following those injunctions so that we can transcend them by becoming actual Krishna conscious. In other words, at some point, in a sense, the rules are meant to be broken or transcended. So we are kind of following the grunts. So Murkhajana refers to people who just like us before we were devotees. They're Murkhajana. We just do what our senses want. Of course, some of us may still be like that. So in that case, if the shoe fits, then whatever. But it kind of refers to a person before becoming acquainted with the guidance of Shastra for your social life and ultimately for directing your spiritual life.
Thank you so much.
Joy. Anyone else wants to say anything, or we stop here? Okie dokie. Well, be Driti. Good luck. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Haribo. Later, fam.